the oppressors argue cases in court, they do so in our name. When an argument like this is made that the Constitution abolishes caste, it is intended to be attractive for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And it is intended to convey the impression that those who speak in the name of the unreserved category are actually speaking on our behalf. I know one such lawyer even today, not one, more than one lawyer. The dividing line in the Supreme Court is very clear. There are those lawyers who always appear for the reserved category, and there are those lawyers that always appear for the unreserved category. And whenever a lawyer appears for the unreserved category, the opening sentence is, quote unquote, I am not against reservations, close quotation. And then they will proceed to argue the case against the reserved category. So there is a lot of this kind of psychological play which goes on in the Supreme Court of India, which ultimately leads up to a chipping away of the right to reservation. And now there's a third category of lawyers who, who are interveners in every single important case relating to reservation. And they too open their arguments by saying, I don't oppose reservations. What I oppose is that the well off communities within the SC and ST, they should not get the benefits so that the less advantaged people within the community get the benefits of reservation. And then they proceed to argue the case against the reserved categories. They are the architects of the argument that Dr. Mohan Gopal just laid out for us, namely that Article 16.4 is quote unquote an enabling provision, and that the right to reservation is not a fundamental right, and that there is a discretion and nothing more than a discretion uh, with the legislature to grant reservations. And we as a community must recognize this. Reservations are not for an individual SC, ST member, they are for the class. And that is why we have to reject the argument of the creamy layer. First of all, I find the expression creamy layer offensive. I don't know what is the meaning of cream in a constitutional context. If at all there was supposed to be any exclusions, I do wish that they were spelt out on the basis of well known social and economic categories. There is no category known as quote unquote creamy layer. Now, having said this, I want to point attention to how, through a gradual process, majority judgments are abandoned and comments made in minority judgments all of a sudden become the majority judgment. And this sort of gradual process, what we have to understand is that when we lose our fundamental rights, we don't lose them all in one go. It's a kind of creeping technology that is employed to destroy the fundamental right. And that is why sometimes it escapes our attention and it goes unnoticed. If there was a dramatic amendment to Article 16 of the Constitution of India in uh, in Parliament, we would be better alerted to the dangers that we face. But what we have seen is the judiciary, measure by measure, small measure by small measure, picking up seeds which are planted in dissenting minority judgments and turning them into majority judgments of the Supreme Court of India by a subterfuge, thereby completely giving the go by to Article 141 of the Constitution of India, which declares the law declared by the Supreme Court as binding on all institutions, including the Supreme Court itself. The Supreme Court does not even have, if I may use a strong word, the honesty to acknowledge that they are overruling a majority judgment. They simply use the device of interpretation. And I will proceed to name three of these devices which have eroded the fundamental right to reservation under Article 16.4. One is the need for data relating to adequacy of representation. The other is the need for data relating to backwardness. And the third is data relating to the fact that efficiency in service has not been compromised by the making of these reservations. These are the three pillars on which Nagraj has been built. The law in Nagraj has been built. And that is why it took me a very long time to actually understand what Nagraj is trying to say, because Nagraj, at the end of the day, upholds the constitutional validity of the amendment introducing consequential seniority and reservation in promotions. So the final declaration of the court is that this is upheld, but the requirement, these three requirements that were spelled out, laid the foundation to effectively destroy the right. Now, if you read the dissenting judgments in Indira Soni by Sahai, by Kuldeep Singh, the seeds of these three arguments are sown over there. And what has happened is, initially I thought that this was the contribution of the lawyers who argued on behalf of the unreserved category in Nagraj. But later I realized that there are passages in the dissenting judgments of Indira Soni. Sometimes we tend to read only the majority judgment and ignore the minority judgments. But if you read the minority judgments, it is there that you will find the origin of these three categories, namely, is a backward person really backward? Number two, are you really underrepresented? And number three, are you not thereby compromising the efficiency of? So I think Dr. Gopal actually mentioned something. The manner in which Dr. Mohan Gopal presented his points, there is not a single judgment of the Supreme Court which even mentions these arguments. I can understand an argument being mentioned and rejected. The Constitution is sometimes looked upon as a technical tool and nothing beyond that. The, uh, the reason why Article 16 is there is often not mentioned, and that is why you can hear people with a straight face getting up in the Supreme Court and saying caste is abolished. Yeah? If you don't know that caste is very much alive and kicking, you will not understand Article 16 of the Constitution of India and its necessity for being there in the Constitution. Dr. Mohan Gopal referred to it as the third of the three fundamental rights in the Constitution, namely the medium through which equality of opportunity is achieved. Um, if I'm not mistaken, I think India's constitution is unique in the world in providing for reservations uh, in, uh, in, in public employment. In the United States, we do have what they call affirmative action. But I think in some of the judgments of the court, the distinction between affirmative action and reservation has been clearly set out by saying that when it comes to affirmative action, we are all standing in the same queue. But when it comes to reservation, there are separate queues in which we stand. So, what we need to be clear about is when we are talking about Article 16.4, we are talking about a separate queue in which we stand. And if we are talking about a separate queue in which we stand, there is no question of chipping away at it. No matter what you do, it is a queue which will not admit into itself people from the unreserved category. So, this sharp distinction must be borne in mind between the constitutional regime in India and the constitutional regime in the United States, for example. There is a tendency in the Supreme Court to quote judgments from the US jurisdiction without understanding the differences in the constitutions that exist between the two. Ours is a post Second World War constitution. Let's understand that very clearly. It's influenced by two things: the freedom movement as well as the movement for social reform. And Justice Chandrachud, in one of his passages in the Shabrimalai case, he says so in no uncertain terms. He says, side by side with the struggle for independence from colonial rule, there was another struggle going on, and that was the struggle for social justice. So, what was this struggle for social justice? That struggle for social justice is the struggle that Dr. Mohan Gopal pointed out, led by Dr. Ambedkar. This is also the reason why, in Article 25 of the Constitution of India, there is an explicit provision which says nothing in this Constitution shall prevent the legislatures from introducing measures of social reform which are of an economic, financial, and secular nature, though they may be associated with religion. So, this brings me to one of the points, namely that when you read a constitution, you need to read it as an organic document and as an organic whole. So, even when we were discussing issues like secularism, we had to point out that even though the word secularism was not mentioned in the preamble, a plain reading of Article 14, 15, and 16, and 19, and Article 25 and 26 would lead to the conclusion that India was, is, and hopefully always will remain a secular country. So, this is the other problem. Uh, Somehow, legal argumentation lends itself to slicing up issues and isolating them, presenting them in that manner for judicial decision, thereby preventing us from looking at the macro picture. So I would argue that as a litigating lawyer, the first thing we need to do when we argue cases in court is always begin your argument by explaining to the court why was that particular provision introduced in the constitution in the first place. And don't stop only at reading extracts of the Constituent Assembly debates. We have moved well beyond that. Today, the court uses many other tools to interpret the Constitution. I can't ever forget one sentence which I read in a judgment of Justice Krishna Iyer, which I'm unable to locate it at this moment, but he said very clearly, he said Gandhi and not Maxwell should inform the interpretation of constitutions and the statutes. We seem to be still using Maxwell to interpret the Constitution of India, and this is where we go wrong. So, very quickly to the three issues. The other issue, of course, is always the argument in favor of a meritocracy, also advanced by Mr. Nani Palkiwala, the late Mr. Palkiwala, in the Rasoni case, where he said these two things: one is caste is abolished, and two, we are a meritocracy. And that is the reason why we need to have the most meritorious. So, to come back to the three inhibitors of reservation, adequacy of data on backwardness, I had the privilege of persuading a bench headed by Justice Kurian Joseph to refer the Nagraj case for reconsideration by a larger bench, mainly on the ground that once the President of India had determined that a particular community belonged to the scheduled caste, no court of law on the earth, as Dr. Mohan Gopal pointed out, when it says nothing shall prevent, it means no power on earth can prevent anybody from looking into the issue of backwardness. It's only the president. And the moment the president includes a particular caste in the backward castes, de facto backwardness is established, and no court in this country can say, prove that you are backward. I remember Justice Bhanumati was also sitting on the bench, and I heard something rather horrific. I have not said it publicly because I'm not very clear whether I heard right, but I did hear her say that, you know, my own driver gets paid more than I get paid, or something to that effect, some statement, which was responsible for adding the issue of creamy layer to the reference when it finally got made. When the matter came before Justice, a bench presided over by Justice Deepak Mishra, he said to me, Ms. Jaising, this reference can be decided in 5 minutes. I said, oh yeah, all right, try and decide it in 5 minutes. He said, I'm the one who wrote the UP Power Corporation judgment. How can you make me change my own judgment? And I said, I will make you change your own judgment. And I'm happy to say that ultimately in Jarnyal Singh, the argument was accepted that once the president declares a caste to be scheduled caste, no court can go behind that declaration of law, and it was not necessary any longer to provide data of backwardness. But the question still remained data for adequacy of representation. Now here, Dr. Mohan Gopal has pointed out exactly how what is a right is turned into a limitation on the right. Adequacy of representation is there in the Constitution for the purpose of achieving a certain threshold of representation. Here comes the question of representation. Representation is an end in itself. Let's be clear about that. When we demand reservation, we are demanding it because we want what we call our share in representation in public employment, in legislatures, in the judiciary, etc., etc. Instead of which, it is linked somehow to what is adequate. The Constitution doesn't define what is adequate. And we were at pains in telling the court in Jarnyal Singh that adequacy means in accordance with their percentage in the population. And the court did not accept that argument. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Justice Nariman, who wrote a separate opinion, says so in so many words that we are not accepting the argument that adequacy means adequacy in terms of their existence in the next major battle in that direction, proving that adequacy is equal to population. And thirdly, efficiency. Now, again, in Pavitra 2, the whole question of efficiency, the argument was there have been no studies on whether reservation leads to inefficiency. Now, and I'm sorry, just for adequacy of representation, again, I advanced an argument that I would like to point to because it's very, very important. How do you determine adequacy? Okay. The argument on the other side was take every cadre and see whether there is adequacy in that cadre. And we said no, take the service as a whole. And then the other side was arguing count every head. And I argued no, counting every head would make it a census. What you need is a representative sample to be examined. And if the representative sample is showing inadequacy, don't ask me to go and count every head and give you the statistics. That argument was accepted by Justice Chandrachud in his uh, in his judgment. And finally, on the question of efficiency, again, the courts have been saying merit, merit, merit. And there, of course, the arguments are well laid out that you cannot assume that people from SC and ST community are less meritorious. And there also the court accepted the argument that when you judge efficiency, you judge efficiency of the department as a whole. And all states have taken to publishing efficiency indicators of their departments. They tell you how the consumer department is working, they tell you how the administrative department is working, they have internal grievance procedures, and they are mandated now to publish data about the efficiency of their departments. And we argued that take that data which the state publishes about the efficiency of the department as a whole, and you have a measure to say that efficiency is not eroded. So I would like to stop by saying that I see many battles ahead. We have made advances, but let's not forget that a younger generation of lawyers will have to carry several battles forward. One is, what exactly do we mean by adequacy of representation? Are we in a position to convince the court that population is the only indicator of adequacy? Secondly, can we put an end to this argument that employing SC and ST people is compromising the efficiency of the department? Thirdly, can we somehow manage to get an end of the argument that the creamy layers should be excluded, more particularly for the purpose of promotion? And finally, the overarching argument that Dr. Mohan Gopal presented, that when you say, when you can't, the entire Nagra judgment hangs on one word, namely enabling. And can we explain to the court that the word enabling was never meant to be a mechanism to defeat reservations? As you all know, in the Chauhan judgment, the Supreme Court has said there can be no mandamus to the government saying make reservations. Now, look at the deadly combination of the two: A, enabling; two, no mandamus. And lastly, of course, the Chauhan judgment also says that there can be no mandamus directing the government of India from disclosing the socio-economic census which has been conducted. It defies my imagination how a socio-economic study conducted by the government of India for the very purpose of studying its own population can be kept a secret and be kept under wraps. I conclude by saying these are the challenges that we face, and I think we should prepare a generation of younger lawyers to argue these cases in the coming days. Thank you.
The Ambedkar ji thought that, so let us recognize the socially educational backward classes and the difficulties they undergo, and the labor they undergo, and what are the steps to be taken. So that is the reason why when the reservations were introduced, article, as Professor Mohan Gopal says, article 16.4 says only the one word, the backward classes. Backward classes were not defined, because already untouchables and Adivasis were defined. And when the Champakam Dorai Raj case, communal reservations, it was struck down by the Madras High Court and appealed to the Supreme Court. Then there was no provision at all to provide reservations to social education backward classes. That is the reason why, under the leadership of Ambedkar, in the first constitutional amendment, 15.4 was introduced in 1951 to provide reservations in the education also. So without providing the reservations in the education, then to recognize the socially education backward classes, then Kalelkar Commission could not see the light of the day. Then Mandal Commission was appointed in 1979. He submitted his report in 1980. 1993 onwards, it is being implemented in the employment, in the post and services, without providing any reservations in the education. Only during the urgency period, 2006, Article 15.5 was added, providing the reservations in the education institutions. Till then, reservations were not there. Though the Constitution was adopted, 26/11/1949, and it came into force from 26/1/1950. But nobody took any steps to implement the reservations till 1993, because there was no will or intention to provide the reservations. And that is the reason why state governments wrote a letter to the government of India during when the Nehru was the prime minister. You are not doing any steps for recognizing the socially educational backward classes, and there is a pressure from the state government. What shall we do it? Then you can appoint your own commissions. You can recognize your social educational backward classes. You can implement in your states are concerned. That's how the state governments appointed the separate commissions. For example, in Andhra Pradesh, Anantaraman Commission was appointed, and the social educational backward classes have been identified, and then some categorization also have been made. So from 1972 onwards, the reservations in education and the employment are being implemented in the South Indian states, nearly about 11 states. But center is concerned, we are mainly speaking today with regard to the central services and the central services as stated under Article 16(4) of the Constitution of India. India. Therefore, then after Mandal Commission only, then 27% reservations were recommended by the Mandal, apart from various other recommendations to get the education, social, economic welfare measures, but none of them were able to be implemented. But the Supreme Court in the Indira Sani case, as the senior counsel rightly said, subject to the exclusion of the creamy layer, you have to implement the 27% reservation. So how to exclude the creamy layer? An expert committee was appointed by Ramanandan, Justice Ramanandan this thing. He clearly submitted a report stating that the salary income and agricultural income shall not be included, and if the property income, because a richness of a family will be denoted by the property. Suppose he got the rental income or share income or landed income, so property income exceeds a particular limit, then he can be included in the creamy layer. For example, the government employees. Government employees, if directly recruited Group 1 officer or Class A officer, his social status is high, therefore he can get his children educated, therefore he can be excluded. But now even till today, if both are appointed, both parents are appointed as Class 3 employees, and if they get promotion as Class 2 and Class 1 officers after 40 years, their salary and the agriculture income is not included. Even if their salary is nearly about 30 lakhs, they are not excluded and they are not treated as a creamy layer. But whereas elementary school teachers, both of them are elementary school teachers, if their salary is exceeding the income limit of 8 lakhs, their children are being denied. Therefore, while Public Service Commission, while the selection process is going on, now they are eliminating the backward classes whose parents' income, private salaried persons, if their income is more than 8 lakhs, every year the hundreds of the backward class students are denied in getting the post. So that share is not taken forward, and is being. That is even today, as per the data furnished in the parliament itself, even neither class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, the reservations are not even out of 27, is not even just crossed only 50% only. So therefore, one Indira Sani said, while giving the reservations one hand, you cannot take away the reservations with another hand. But the same thing is happening here. Now, Professor Mohan Gopal rightly, then he was canvassing today about Article 14, how they are de-reserving even the given reservations by way of under the guise of the creamy layer, or there is no adequate, there is no data, or there is no criteria, and on what basis the Supreme Court now slowly, then insofar the the chapter 3 is concerned, it is and there is insofar basic structure is concerned, the Supreme Court cannot then tinker with the basic structure or then interfere with the basic structure, because the sovereign power vests in the people of India in the democratic country. The essence of the entire constitution in the preamble is to secure all its citizens social, economic, political justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. And in the Kesavananda Bharati case, what is the equality? Equality means equality of opportunity, equality of treatment, and equality of the results. Therefore, treating unequals as equals is perpetuating inequality. Therefore, treating the unequals, you should treat the equality. That was the principle. Then, insofar as the basic structure of the Constitution of India, then Indrasani principles, then you know, and in the basic 1973 in the Kesavananda Bharati case, a few points I will held that the Parliament can amend the Constitution, but cannot destroy its basic structure. The Constitution is supreme. Some of the basic features of the Constitution termed as supremacy of the Constitution, objectives specified in the preamble of the Constitution, freedom and dignity of individual, principle of equality and equal justice, essence of fundamental rights in part 3 of the Constitution, the concept of social and economic justice to build social welfare under part 4, balance between the fundamental rights and the directive principles, the limitations upon the amending power conferred by Article 368 welfare state, etc. Though basic structure, what are the basic structures have been already then explained in the Kesavananda Bharati case. Now what is happening? Now slowly, the fundamental right given under Article 54 is being taken away. For example, then Constitution has been amended. Then even in the promotions also, in Nagada promotions also, then Indrasani also it is stated that 27% reservations you have to fill up. Suppose if the backlog is there and it should be carried forward. While filling up the backlog, you cannot have the limit of 50%. By a separate backlog, you have to fill up separately in addition to the 50%. But that is not being followed. For years together, from 93 to 2010, 11 till that, then the all backward classes, whoever are selected, adjusted in the open, whoever are selected in the open category, adjusted in the reserved category only. Now it has been clarified by the Government of India, Ministry of Social Justice, National Commission for Backward Classes. Look, the merit is whether it is scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, the backward classes, whichever caste reserved category belongs to, is a meritorious candidate. Therefore, merit cannot have caste, religion, race, or region, nothing. Therefore, while selecting merit, 50% is merit separate. Then thereafter, then reservations, scheduled class, the backward classes, and separately. Suppose if the backlog is there, next year if we have to fill up, and the backlog we have to fill up separately, that you cannot take it into 50%. So that is the judgment. Even that judgment. Therefore, to undone these things, then Supreme Court starts now the trend of the Supreme Court is, then where is the data for the providing even 27% reservation, or in Tamil Nadu 69% reservation, or in Maharashtra the Marathas reservation. Where is the data? Then the data is concerned because there was hue and cry in the Parliament. They wanted to collect socio-economic caste census consisting of various particulars, whether it is a daily wage worker, weekly wage worker, or whether it is a houseless or hut or anything. Every particular was there. But having collected 20 crores of rupees, they doesn't publish the 2011 census and quote time and again ask where is the data, on what basis. Data as collected by Mandal was only 1931 census. 1931 census contains all the data, but it may not be accurate because it was only collected insofar as the British ruled areas only. Other ruled areas it may not have it. Therefore, the caste census, there was a scheme, there was a plan, there was an evil intention by the even freedom fighters, the upper forward class people, not to have the caste census after 1931, even after independence came, and the caste census, they can have the data of the birds, the animals, the reptiles, everything they can have the data, but the backward classes data they should not have it. But only the major portion of the right of the backward classes is being taken by only 10% of the forward classes. 10% of the forward classes in the political, in the political field, in the economic, in the education, in the employment, and the total share of the India and the right of that is the reason why that the slogan is, as Professor Mohan Gopal said, one of the constitutional the member of in the debates, then you take your share, you give our share, whatever it may be. So even till today, India as per the Indian democratic country, if it is a representative country, everybody should have in a democratic country, everybody should have their own representation in the legislature, so that the legislations will be the act will be enacted. In the judiciary also, their representation should be there, because now the Supreme Court is the creation of the Constitution. It's not the creator, whether executive, legislative, or the administration. It's a creation under the Constitution. Therefore, Supreme Court not above the Constitution. They are under the creation of the Constitution. But they think that, as senior counsel says, by making use of the power of the contempt and power under Article 141, and they destroy the Constitution, they rewrite the Constitution, deprive the right of the downtrodden, the fundamental rights, they tinker and they meddle with the fundamental rights, and they shut up the activists of the Indian activists under guise of something else. Unfortunately, because as the unity was not there, enlightenment was not there, the constitutional provisions are not being understood properly, educated to the children of the entire India. Therefore, we are not selfish. We are not concerned for ourselves. We are concerned for the whole of India. As Indira Chani says, all right, the backward classes, we the backward classes, whoever is doing the menial work and the socially, educationally backward, and who is facing the discrimination, oppression, suppression, is the backward class. Therefore, one small clarification with the senior counsel, Indira Jayasingh, the equality, the justice, the liberty, if it is implemented, caste system will disappear.